Okay, so welcome back. In this unit we'll talk about uh, pretty much the same thing that we discussed in the earlier unit 3.8 of summarizing variable, but we'll do it by using Excel sheet. So most of these things would be videos in that case. Okay, so welcome back. In this introduction, we'll basically talk about a data file, where to download it from, and also describe the variables within the data file that you're supposed to download. And we'll use the same data file to discuss all these constructs, except for the last one where we will use a different data file. And I'll have a slide before that video as well. So because you'll be using same data file throughout most of these constructs, I'm not gonna ask you to download this file every time you do it. It's assumed that you have already downloaded it after watching the next few slides. Thank you so much. So this is the data file I'm referring to, city crimes data file, and you can find this data file in the textbook website. Please download it, have it ready, and watch the demonstration video. And while you watch it, make sure you do the analysis as I do in the video. So save this file, and this file will be used for all the analysis except for the last one, as I said. Again, this is the data file for all the most of the analysis except the last one that we'll discuss it for this particular unit. So, yep. And in the next two slides, I'll talk about um, what do you say, where to get it from, and describe the data file itself in the next two slides. Of course, you know where to get it from. It's from the textbook website, and here's the link. Okay, so for this particular set of videos, I'm going to using this particular site, and the link is there on the textbook website, and we're going to download this particular file, and we'll use it for most of same file for most of the analysis except for the last one where it says more summarizing. For that, we'll download this particular file. So, and as usual, open these files, save it as original first, then save it as a working draft or a working file, so that the original always stays. So I'll stop here. This is just to show you the first part of it. Then I'll go over in each short video the specific things we'll talk about, like how to calculate the sums, the range, the amount change, the percentage change, the running rates, the running ratios, percent of total, and then finally we'll talk about more summarizing. That's when we'll use this data file. Okay, so now that I've downloaded this data file for the first few analyses that I'll talk about, I just wanted to give you an idea that I created several tabs. The original file looks like this, but I created further tabs, Excel sheets, where I'll run each of the analysis in this specific one. Like for instance, we'll talk about sum, um, then and so on and so forth. So so what I want to tell you is that I'm going to change the little bit. I'm going to color code these things so that um, they look more. You can differentiate between 2011 and 2012. Just to give you an idea, let's make a color code this first. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter, maybe. Okay, or let's say, and this one a little darker, just so we can quickly distinguish between the 2011 data and 2012 data. And I'm gonna put this in borders so it looks like a table. Now, So these are the changes I have made, and just to give you an idea of what this is the crimes data for different cities as a function of different states. And if you look at it here, the first column gives information. All these are numbers, quantitative variables, right, for cities and states. So the first column gives information about the population in that city, right? The second column in 2011, right? And the next set of things start with 2012. So that's why these are different colored. Um, Population of that city in 11, violent crimes committed in 2011 that are reported, then property crimes that are committed that are reported in 2011. So we have three important types of information here: population in 11, violent crimes in 11, and property crimes in 11. Okay. Now, in the next three columns, we have same information but for 2012. So population 2012, violent crimes in 2012, and property crimes in 2012. Now we'll run different analyses on these. This is how the data looks for now, and I'm going to stop here um, so we can move on to doing different things. I'm trying to make these as short as possible so you'll have it will be easy for you to go over this. Okay, now that you know what analysis we'll be doing in this unit, and now that you've also downloaded the data file and know some structure of it, the first thing we'll talk about in the next slide in the video is creating sums as a function of year. So use the data file. It's the same data file. Okay, so this is where we were. Now we're going to start with summarizing um, crimes by year. And so I've copied this information to this particular file, and I've also zoomed it to 140 just in case if you're wondering why it looks different. And what are we doing here is we're trying to see the total crimes by year. So I've created two columns here, and you know how to create columns. I'm color coding this so each analysis is represented in different colors. So how do we calculate total crimes um, for 2011 and 12? So if you see the second column for each of these set of differently colored columns, you can see that this is a violent crime and this is a property crime. And if you combine these crimes, then that will give you the total crime for that year. Same with the 2012. So we'll start with how do you do that? Well, it's simple function. All formulas in Excel start with an equal sign. So type equal sign, then parentheses, right? And then you add these two cells. So we'll add it 2011 violent crime. Okay, you selected that cell, then enter the plus sign, then select the property crime cell for 2011. So it shows you clearly equals parenthesis D2 and E2. D2 is this cell, number representing the row, and the letter representing the column. And once you do that, close the parenthesis, enter. So this gives you the total crimes committed in 2011 as reported for this city. And we need to copy this to all other cities. So all you need to do for that is double click on this right bottom corner. Voila, it's done. You see that? Now we'll do the same for 2012. Again, we are uh, combining, adding the crimes committed that are violent and that are property related, add these two. So again, equal sign, parentheses, select the violent crime cell, use the plus sign, then property crime cell, close the parenthesis, enter. That's it, right? Now to copy it down to other cities, all you have to do is double click. So this is how you calculate the total crimes. And if you look at this, it will give you information about total crimes for each city for a year, right? Now, these are raw numbers. This may not give you more information, right? But in the next video, we will talk about calculating some other statistics like minimum and maximum. I can do it right here, but I'm just trying to make these short videos. So in the next video, we'll talk about how to generate minimum and maximum values for each of these. Okay, so we'll use the same data file, the crimes data file, to talk about maximum minimum range, the measures we typically use when you have numbers, the quantitative variable, and that's what we'll do in the next video, in the next slide. Okay, so now we're going to calculate the minimum, maximum, and range values. Remember, these are when you have quantitative variables, that's what you do. We do it for each of these variables, the population variable, violent crime variable, property crime, and so on and so forth, each of the year. So for that, it's very simple. I've created three um, um, I created a table with minimum, maximum, range as the values that you're calculating. And I'm going to use the cell under population of 2011 to see what is the minimum population and what's the maximum population. So equal sign as usual, then parentheses, um, then then you have to type in before parentheses minimum. Min is fine. So I'm going to actually caps it. It doesn't matter. You can do it with regular alphabets as well. Okay, minimum. Then you select all the cells that you're trying to find a minimum value from, right? And you can do that by just dragging the cell all around and close it, enter. So that's the minimum population value, right? And in order to copy it for the other variables, you have to, again, you cannot double click. If you double click here, it will copy it down. That's not what we want. It's formalized copied on this side. So you hold this bottom right corner of the cell and drag it all the way to the end of the variable list. Oops. See that? So that's how you generate minimum values for each of those variables. The maximum value is again similar. Equal sign, max, parentheses, then you select the cells. Another way to select the cells is just click on the first cell, shift down arrow. There's another way. Again, there are different ways of doing it. Um, okay, so there you go. Then close the parenthesis, enter. You have the maximum value. Now, what we do now here is drag this all the way to the right, and that's how the maximum values are um, created for each column. Now, the next thing to do is to create the range, which is a difference between the max and minimum, which will gives you a range of values there are. For that, you need to subtract the minimum value from the maximum value. And to do that, what you need to do is use this simple function of equal sign and parentheses, just like doing math. Take the maximum value and minus minimum value, close the parentheses, enter. And you copy the same for other columns. That's it. You see that? This is how you do calculate the minimum, maximum, and the range for all the variables here. I'm going to stop here. In the next, we'll talk about the amount of change um, in crimes. That's what we'll talk about in the next slide, next video. Okay, so in the next slide in the video, we'll talk about how to calculate the change in crime in terms of number of change, the number change in crime, and that's what we'll do in the next slide in the video. Okay, so far we looked at the calculating the sums, right, and then calculating the minimum maximum range. Now we'll talk about how to generate meaningful information related to change in crimes from 2011 to 2012. The change in crimes specific to violent crimes and change in crimes specific to the property crimes, then total change in crimes from 11 to 12. So I've created these three columns here and gave it this color. You don't need to do that. I just did it so I can clearly show you distinctly what analysis we are running for each video. Okay, so What is violent crime change from 11 to 12? Well, you have number of violent crimes in 2011 in this column, and you have number of violent crimes in 2012. If you want to see the difference between these two, what you do is you subtract the new from the old, or subtract the old from the new. So violent crime 2012 minus violent crime 2011, that will give you the change in violent crime from 11 to 12. And you can do the same thing for property crimes. Then you can do the same thing for total crimes. Because remember, we already calculated the sums, the totals for 11 and 12. And if you subtract these two, then you'll get the 2012 one. So, and it is pretty easy. It's just like using a calculator. So we are looking at the violent crime change in the amount change, the actual number of changes in crime, reported crimes in a violent type. So equal sign, just simple arithmetic, close the open the parentheses. So VC change in 12 minus VC change in 11. So the VC change in 12 is right here. You see that? First cell, okay? Then you subtract the VC change in 11, right? Where is that VC change in 11? Okay? Then you close the parentheses, enter. So you can see that the violent change in the violent crime reported in Phoenix, right? There is a change of positive change of 1,369, meaning that there are 1,369 more cases reported in 2012 when compared to 2011. And we're just talking about the violent crimes. And we can do the same for the PC and the total crimes. Now, what we need to do now is copy it down. And you know how to do that. Yes, you're right. Double click. There we go. Now we're going to do this for the PC change. Again, equals, open parentheses, select the 2007 PC, 2012 PC. This is the property crime 2012, okay? Minus property crime 2011. It's right here, right? So I'm going to select that, then close the parenthesis, enter. So you can see the property crimes actually reduced. That's why there is a negative number from 2011 to 2012 for the Phoenix city. We're going to copy it down all the way. There you go. Now, you can also calculate the change in numbers in terms of total crimes. And we already have total crimes for 11 and 12. What do you think we should do now? Yes, you're right. Equal sign, total crime for 2012, this one, minus total crime in 2011, which is this one. Close the parentheses, enter. So the total crimes actually reduced from 11 to 12 because of the negative numbers. So again, we copy it down all the way. Voila. So this is how you calculate the change in numbers that you're interested in. So this is actual change in numbers. In the next slide, we'll talk about change in percentage in the next video. Okay, so we use the same data file again to talk about the percentage change. In the last video, we talked about the amount change. Here we'll talk about the percentage change. Again, same data file. Okay, so in the last video, we talked about calculating raw changes, change in the number of crimes in terms of numbers. Now we need to convert this in terms of like how much big of a change is it in terms of percentages? Is it like a 1% increase in crime or 1% decrease in crime? So we're converting the raw numbers into percentages. Keep in mind, the original comparison is to 2011. From 2011, how much did the violent crime change? Well, we know they changed by 1,369. But what is that change in terms of percentage when compared to the original 2011 crime? So in order to do that, you need to um, calculate this this way. So equal sign, right? Now you're trying to see how much the change is from 2011, and this is violent crime, right? So I'm going to select the change in violent crime from 11 to 12 and compare it to the original 2011 violent crime. So divided it by 2011 violent crime. Then close the parenthesis. Enter. Now this is in percentage. Of course, this is out of 1. That's what it does. But when we change the cell type, you'll see that will convert into percentage. It's like 16.9%. So the violent crimes changed from 11 to 12 by 1,369 number. But what is that number? That number is equal to 69.9% increase. And we're gonna double click on this so it will copy it all the way down. And we do the same for PC. We know that the property crime rate decreased from 11 to 12 by 3,000 cases. But what is that 3,000 cases when compared to 2011? What is the percentage of it? To do that again, you take the VC change, PC change for 2000 for the change from 11 to 12 that we calculated, and see how much it is when compared to divided by the what do you say 2011 property crimes. You see that? Click enter. At any point, if you're not sure if you did the correct thing and selected the correct one, you need to double click on this and it will show you the formula here. So L2 and E2. So you divided this first one, PC, that's correct, PC change, and the red one is right here, which is crime, PC 2011. So we selected the correct slide. How about this one? VC changed by VC 11, so that's correct as well. This is to just double check. Now I'm gonna copy it. You know how to do that, right? Now the next thing is to see how much of a change there is from 11 to 12, not by the type of crime, but crimes in general. We know that the crimes reduced by 2,333 cases. But what is that in terms of percentage when compared to 2011? So to do that, it's the same thing, equal sign. Select the change from 11 to 12, divided by 2011 crime, right? And close the parentheses, hit enter. So it reduced by 3.2%. Again, this is out of 1. We need to convert this into out of 100. So double click. There you go. So now that we have this, right, now we need to convert this into percentage. To do that, you need to select these 3 columns, right? Then right click on one of the column headers, okay? Then click on Format Cells. Remember, we are converting those cells into percentage type. So we're going to select the category as percentage and change the decimal to 1. Click OK. Now it's more meaningful. Do you see that? It has converted the decimals out of 1 into out of 100. Now you can clearly see that overall crimes for Phoenix decreased by 3.2% from 11 to 12. Out of which that decrease actually comes from the PC. And in fact, the violent crimes increased by 16.9% from 11 to 12. So this is some meaningful information. This is how you make sense of it. So we just talked about percentage change. Now we'll talk about running rates, then the ratios that we discussed in the previous unit. Okay, and now we'll talk about how to calculate the running rates in the next slide in the video. And same data file. Okay, so now we'll talk about rates. Rates are a way of giving the prevalence of something. So for instance, if you're talking about violent crimes in 11 and 12, you talked about how much it changed, but without taking into account how big of a city it is and what the population is. Once you compare the crimes um, based on the population, then you'll have more meaningful information about how many crimes per X number of individuals in a city. That's more intuitive, meaningful information. So we usually take a number and see how many crimes out of every 100 individuals or 100,000 individuals. It's usually in the FBI reports they provide like how many number of crimes per 100,000 individuals in a city. So that's one benchmark, one way of comparing it. And to do that, first you need to calculate the rate per capita, meaning how many crimes per individual. For every individual in the population, how many crimes there are, then convert that into per 100,000. And we'll start with this first, then we'll talk about how to convert that into per 100,000. Now it's pretty simple. Remember, we're talking about violent crimes um, out of population per member. So you take the violent crime for that city and divide it by the population for that city, right? So equal sign, open parentheses, the violent crime in this city and we are in 2012. You can do the same thing for 11, but for simplification, I'm just working on 12 here. So the violent crime for 2012 uh, is, where is it? Violent crime. Yep, there you go. Then divided by how many crimes per individual. So you divide it by population for 2012. Then close the parentheses. That's what it is. So it's basically 0.00637 crimes per person. This is not meaningful, right? So that's when we'll convert this into per 100,000 individuals, um, which is a usual standard. Now again, to copy it down, you know what to do. That's correct. Then you can do the same for the property crimes per capita. So equal sign, um, number of property crimes in 2012. It's right here. Out of population for 2012 is right here, right? Enter. And this again is not meaningful because it's out of one person, how many crimes. We have to see out of 100,000, which we'll do next. So again, copy this, done. And again, 2012 total crime per capita is also important to think about. And we already have the total crime for 2012 that we calculated using sums, right? So we will look at the total crimes in 2012, it's right here, divided by the total population in 2012. So you'll know total crimes per individual, which is per capita, which again is not so meaningful because it's a one individual. There are fewer crimes than there are number of individuals. That's why you have decimal points here. So again, you'll double click. That's how it's done. So this is out of per capita, right? Per one person. Now we have to see the rate is more meaningful when you have standardized ways, and the way FBI does this is by comparing it to 100,000 individuals in a city. To do that, it's pretty simple. Take the per capita and multiply it by 100,000 because 100,000 is the benchmark you're using. So this is a per capita for 2012 violent crimes. So you will multiply this number. Multiply is the star sign about the 8 number, okay? 100,000, 100,000, 1, 2, 3. Close the parenthesis. There you go. This is more meaningful, right? 636 cases, violent crime cases for every 100,000 individuals. I can copy this all the way down. There you go. And you can do the same for the property crimes. How many property crimes per 100,000? Equal sign. Then you're going to look at the per capita for um, property crimes, multiply it by 100,000. 1, 2, 3. Close the parenthesis, enter. You see that? And double click. So you can see there are more property related crimes than there are the violent crimes per 100,000 individuals. Double click. That's done. Now you can do the same thing for total crimes per 100,000 individuals by using per capita. And same thing, equals. Then select the cell, multiply it by 100,000, close the parenthesis, hit enter. There you go. So in 2012, there are 4,728 cases per every 100,000 individuals in a city of, I think, what was the city? Oops. You have to wait, right? Okay. There you go. Where did it go? Sorry about that. I'm going to just, I don't know, it's because it's in the corner. Well, another way to do it is just shift all the way down and control D, it'll copy it down. It's copied down the formula. Okay, now here's another thing. It's like looking messy, right? This one has 3 decimal points, this has two, and this has 1 decimal point. So we're gonna make these things simpler by, again, we'll use the same formula of selecting this, clicking on the format cells, right click, and use, these are numbers, right? So we're gonna say, where is the number? Number, and change it to 1 decimal point. There you go. You see that? Now it's more meaningful. Or you can get rid of the decimals as a whole. Then you can look at how many cases. Um, so, for instance, the first city of Phoenix, right? Um, um, so there were 636 cases per 100,000 cases. So there are more violent crime cases than PC. Um, and these two should add up to this number. Okay, so in the next video, we'll talk about, this was about rates, comparing it to total number of population, the out of the population. In the next one, we'll talk about ratios, where we'll take two categories and say how often two categories occur, like how many violent crimes per every property crime or vice versa. So the ratios, that's what we'll talk about in the next video. Well, now that we looked at the running rates, now we're going to talk about how to calculate the running ratios. And that's what we'll do in the video that's in the next slide. Okay, in this video, we'll talk about ratios. So if you want to know in each city how often property crimes are committed when compared to violent crimes. So it's the property crime versus violent crime ratio. To know that, it's very simple for each year. For each year, like 2012, what was the ratio of property versus violent crime, and what was it for 2012? To do that, basically, you will use the data cell specific to property crime for that year and violent crime, and calculate the ratio, and that tells us how often one occurs in correspondence with the other. And I'm going to do that here for 2011. So we're going to use these three cells, right? These cells, basically these two cells, violent and property. So equal sign, and we're calculating how many property crimes for every violent crime. That's the point. Equal sign, parenthesis open. Now 2011 property crime is right here, divided by 2011 violent crime. Close the parenthesis, hit enter. So it's 7.9. In other words, there was 8 property crimes for every violent crime. And I'm going to copy this all the way down. Oops, there's something wrong with this. Okay. No, I don't know what happened today. It's probably because I'm going to use my usual formula of taking it all. Oh, I know why. Because I zoomed it maybe. Okay, control down, control D will copy it down. It's the same thing basically. Then for 2012 then, property crime for 2012 is right here, divided by violent crime for 2012 right here. Close the parenthesis, hit enter. Okay. I'm going to try one more time if I can copy this the usual way. Okay. Now I did it. Okay. So now again, if you see, these have like different decimal points. Some have 2 decimal points, 3, and so on. 3 here, right? We're going to change it. It's very simple. Select the columns, right click, format cells, right? Use a number, and I'm gonna make it 1, but you can also go to 0. Let's do 0. So For every one one violent crime, there are eight property crimes. So that's how you do it, and you then in for which city has more ratio by sorting. And again, we'll talk about sorting in a different video. Okay, so this is the last thing that we'll talk about using this data file, the crimes data file, and that is percent of totals. Once you are done with that, we'll use a different data file to talk about more summarizing stuff. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to calculate the percent of total. So we'll look at especially the violent crimes and see what percent of violent crimes in 2011, what percent of crimes are violent crimes. So to the how much do the violent crimes account to out of the total crimes? So the percentage of violent crimes in 2012 and 2012, 11. So let's look at the 11 first. Now again, we're looking at violent crimes percent of total. So you need to look at total and in comparison to the violent crime. So the violent crime for 2011 is right here. You see that? Sorry, right here. And the total for 2011 is right here. So you divide this and over that by this, you'll get the um, percent of total. So violent crime in 2011 equals parentheses, right? Violent crimes in 2011 is this for this city. Divide that by total crimes for 2011, which is right here, right? And close the parentheses, hit enter. There you go. And double click. Again, this is not in percentage, this is out of proportion, it's out of one. So we can convert that soon. So double click, you copied that and you do the same for 2012. So what percentage of all cases in 2012 are violent crimes? So equals, open parentheses, violent crime in 2012 is right here, divided by total number of crimes for 2012, which is right here, and close the parentheses and hit enter. There you go. Then you double click and that's copied. Now this is not in percentage, it's out of one. Percentage is changing it out of 100. So, and same thing, select these two columns, right click on one of the header columns right here, then format editing, format cells, sorry, and then click the percentage and keep a single decimal point. Click OK. There you go. So you can see that 11% of crimes were violent crimes in 2011 for that city, and whereas 13% for the same city in 2012. And you can compare that with other cities. Okay, so that's about percent of total. And the last thing that we'll um, talk about would be the some other summarizing tips by using a totally different data file. Okay, so the last thing, like few more things that you can do with Excel in terms of summaries, that's what we'll talk about, but use a different data file. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. Okay, so for this last part, we will talk about few other summarizing things that you can do with the data set. We're going to use comparisons data file, and that can be accessed from the website, textbook website, by using this link. And this is the thing. And once you download this data file and open it, save it, then watch the video in the next slide to follow along my demonstration. Okay, for this particular part of a few more things, we will use a different data set, and that's this comparisons Excel sheet. And I've downloaded it, and I'll open it, and we will go from there. Okay, so now that I downloaded the data, here is the data file. Now this is about the presidential staff salaries. And the first column gives information about the name of the individual, then their status, then the salary, and pay basis, and the title and the position. So we'll try to calculate some. We are interested in numbers, right? So this salary, this is what we're interested in. So we will try to go all the way down to the bottom of this um, column, and have created this small table to calculate total pay, mean pay, sorry, total pay, mean pay, and the median pay. So for the total pay, you actually summing it up. So you're gonna click OK, sum, then you add this. The different ways of doing it, one way would be to start from here and click on Shift and take the upward arrow all the way up to the first cell, not the one with the header, but the one below it. So the second row. So you can look at the numbers on the left. It's in 316 now. I'm still waiting 200s. Can keep hitting the. I held the shift button and I'm clicking on the upward arrow button till I go to number 2. There could be easy way, but with the Mac, I'm not sure the key, so about the key, so I'm just using that. So almost there. Okay, so we're not selecting the header. So then close the parentheses, then hit enter. So this will give you, if you want to make sure if that's the right one, you can double click on it. Okay, so this is that. And we're going to calculate the mean and the median. And this is what we discussed in the previous um, unit. Now, instead of doing that, once we know what the values are, see this is selected correctly. And the values are basically C2, C column, and row number 2. That's where the data is starting. So we can actually use this C2, C461 for all of these calculations. So let's do mean then. Mean is written as average in Excel. So again, it doesn't matter if you're using caps or not. I'm going to use caps so you can read it carefully and view it. So average. Then I select the cells, right? Remember what was it? C2 colon C461. You see that? That's what it is. It can be 461 to C2 or C2 4, it doesn't matter. Okay. So that's the average pay. Let's calculate the median. Oh, same thing. Median, so median. And we know the numbers already. C2 colon C461. Close the parentheses. Here it is. So we know that on average, the presidential staff members earn $82,000 per year, and the median is most of them earn not the most, but the middlemost observation. The median most observation 70, and you can see that these two numbers are close to each other. What it means is that the distribution is not skewed, meaning that it is symmetric. And symmetric distributions usually take the form of a normal curve, saying that there are more people in and around 80K, and very few people far away from it, and in terms of less or more. So very few people for 10,000 and very few people with 200,000. Most of the people are centered around mean and median. 880,000 because these are close. Um, for skewed distributions, what happens is it will either be right skewed or left skewed. So um, if it's a right skewed, I'll talk more about those discussions in another video maybe. Okie dokie, this is how you do the other stuff like total, which is sum, mean, and median. You know what? You can also do standard deviation and other things. Let me show you real quick. Uh, for standard deviation, you have to do equals STDEV and just use those numbers, C2 to C461, am I correct? Yes, close it. And there are a lot of things you can do. Again, you can change the decimal points to 2 to make it, um, or you can just select this here and change it to no decimal points. That also works. Okay, and what else can you do? As usual, minimum, maximum, range, all those things. Um, okay, I'm gonna stop the video here.